I don't want to set the world on fire.
Please welcome Tom Montgomery.
A flame in your heart.
I'm here, and your
In
white
my
privilege isn't
heart,
going
I
to save
have
you
but
tonight, okay, guys?
one desire, and that one is you. No other will do. I've lost all ambition for worldly acclaim.
Any government is to monopolize as much violence as possible in order for it to inflict it on as many citizens as possible.
I've been on this like weird anarchist arc for a few months now. This is playing by their rules, exactly how they are written.
Me. I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame.
You're watching the Dog and Chicken Show. Like, share, subscribe.
That's right. It's time for the Dog and Chicken Show. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Dog and Chicken Show. This is 201, baby. Yeah, we hit that benchmark and powering forward with, I don't know, whatever the fuck we want to do. Anyway, I am Chicken. Find me on the X or Twix or Twitter, whatever the hell you call it these days. Elon's little baby. Yeah, I think that's what we decided in episode 201. What we were going to call it was Twix.
Twix.
I was really drunk.
I like
Maybe
it.
it was something else. I can't remember.
Is it left Twix or right Twix?
I don't know. Is this a bop it? Like, twist it, pull it,
turn it.
Anyway, I am Chicken, Dr. Chicken. That
seed from the government.
Yeah, burn it down at Barton Cluck on the Twix, whatever we're gonna call it. And as always, flanked to my side, the man, the myth, the legend, the one who makes cowboy hats sexy again, the reigning, defending, undisputed, revolutionary wrestling podcast champion, Tony.
Yes, it is I, your 15-time revolutionary wrestling podcast champion, the blend master himself, non-chill filtered, quadruple distilled, Tony G, and you can find me across all of my podcasting endeavors and all my social media presences at Linktree/Tony the Rod, and we are back here with, yes, a pre-recorded conspiratorial episode of the Dog and Chicken Show. We passed episode 200. We had a live. It was a resounding success of debauchery and a long, lengthy, just shit show of a stream, but it was beautiful in many different ways.
Sounds like most episodes.
Yeah, pretty much. I was just, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And
fine, it was run of the mill. Is that what you want me to say? It was just average?
I was just saying I didn't make it through the post show, so it must have been pretty epic because
you made it longer than I thought. I actually went back and looked yesterday when I recorded with Brendan. Also, check that out. New episode of Dad's Worldwide just dropped. We did 3 hours last week. I didn't realize we went that long on the live stream. No, the live stream was 3 hours.
Oh, God.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then the post show was an hour and a half, and you made it 40 minutes in. So you went longer than you thought.
Yeah, the world was spinning. Let's just say that. And that's on the post show. I don't think you guys caught it on camera, but that was when I decided I was done. Is I went outside for a smoke out my back door. I slipped and fell on the ice out there. And I was like, oh no, like I better get back inside before I hurt myself. And I came in and I slipped and fell in my fucking room right here. And I was like, I didn't even slip and fall. It was a drunk fall. So I was like, nope. Yeah, I can't even make it back to my computer. I just need to call it. I remember, I think I got back on and said, I'm out, guys. Bye. But yeah, it was that kind of post show. I was falling down drunk.
It was soupy drunk, and yes, I like. It was very cringy because I was rather inebriated myself and slurring rather spectacularly, and yeah, not Not a fun one to rewatch, but it was actually kind of fun to rewatch at parts. So, oof. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
It was
those are
good-ish.
Those are the blackmail episodes. That's what the post show is. Yeah.
Yeah, that should probably just go away. I mean, oh man,
Yeah.
the amount of male anatomy in meme form on that one is just resounding. If you're a big fan of that, like this one's for you.
Yeah.
Not this episode.
Yeah, not this
last
one.
week's post.
Yeah, not this one. I'm
No,
drinking
this is
water.
gonna be a lot less sexy, I think.
This is one we've talked about doing for a while, and we like to throw in these pre-recorded conspiracies and stories and things like that. And there's always huge interest around. If you don't know by the title of it or the background picture, the Titanic is just one of those things that have gone into history with so much lore and folktale and stories and conspiracies and all kinds of crazy shit. So yeah, we kind of have to do this one.
Yeah, I guess I thought we were talking about Chuck E. Cheese, but
no, that's 202. Yeah. We're doing that one next week.
All right, perfect. Thank God. About time.
Long
overdue.
There. Yeah. Then how Five Nights at Freddy's is a real thing. Yeah. Dun dun dun.
I think I mentioned this actually. There is a movie starring Nicolas Cage. Go figure.
Oh, God.
That is actually like a Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff clone, but the movie came out like 2 years before this Five Nights at Freddy's movie came out, and it's somehow better. Like, which is something you don't usually say about a Nicolas Cage movie. But like, I watched a review of it. And I'm like, this actually seems mindless enough that this might be enjoyable. I can't remember the name of it, but it looked incredibly.
That's fine. I wouldn't remember the name of it either. It's just, it's not worth.
He makes like 3 movies a year. It's impossible to, even if you're a fan.
Yeah, no, let's not.
We're going to talk a lot about Nicolas Cage tonight. Yeah, so.
Oh, God. You can make that a drinking game at home.
We're going to talk about the Titanic. Yes. All right. That's what we're talking about.
Okay. Let's go through. Let's go through the. Yeah. Let's go through the story of the Titanic, of course. Oh, drink. Tony's get interrupted.
Yeah, I've got another set of ears down here. Yes, because he's been bugging me about doing this episode. He wanted to listen to it because I think he's seen a lot of the YouTube shorts on the subject. So I think he's kind of interested to hear some of the finer points, and we're gonna do our best. Okay, we've got a believer, as you can hear in the studio. If you wanted to listen, now is your chance to jump onto the thing, and yeah, there you go.
All right.
Okay. All right. Calm down.
So we have a vocal producer off camera for this show. Apparently. Well. Yep. Let's go through the timeline of the official story of what happened to the Titanic. There'll be some clues as we go through there as to what to pay attention to and to hang on to as we go through. So April 14th, 1912. Of course, more stuff happened before this, and we'll get into some of that later. But one of the first things that is noted in the morning of the sinking of the Titanic is Captain Edward J. Smith. They were scheduled to have a lifeboat drill, but that morning he decides to cancel it. Conveniently, as you'll find out later, that proved to be detrimental to about 1,000 people, as we'll come to find out. But later on that evening, 5:50 p.m., after receiving iceberg warnings throughout the day, Captain Smith changes the Titanic's course, heading slightly south. However, the ship's speed is not lowered. The ship's speed will come into play in another conspiracy later on with Captain Smith. Later on that evening, 9:40 p.m., the Mesaba sends a warning to the Titanic about an ice field that includes, in quotes, heavy pack ice, a great number of large icebergs, end quote. Wireless operator Jack Phillips, who works for the Macaroni Company,
I'm not sure why that's relevant. Is handling passengers'
everything
messages.
ties back to macaroni and Kraft.
Yeah, Kraft. Oh my God, yes. Oh, and you know who owns Kraft, or like is the heiress of Kraft, is John Kerry's wife. John Kerry sunk the Titanic. No,
that's a name you don't have to worry about for a long time.
Yeah, nobody cares about that name. But anyway, this Jack Phillips handles the messages and never passes the warning to the bridge of the Titanic. So at 9:40, there was the first warning of ice, and it didn't make it to the crew. 10 o'clock, the shift changes on the bridge. The first officer, William Murdoch, relieving second officer Charles Lightoller as the officer of the watch. Lookouts Frederick Fleet and Regina Lee Reginald. Oh my God, that's a lost name. Reginald Lee begin their watch
so
on the Titanic.
Sexy. Got to bring it back.
I know. I kind of want to have another kid. Just call him Reginald. I just start calling Riker Reginald from here on out.
Oh yeah, there you go. Rebrand.
Yeah, rebrand.
Yeah.
God, poor kid. The night is unusually calm, making icebergs more difficult to see because there are no waves breaking at the icebergs. Adding to the difficulties is the fact that the crow's nest binoculars have been misplaced.
See, no, that's conflicting because there's actually reports that it had binoculars, but it was behind a locked case and they didn't have the key. They couldn't get into the cage, whatever was holding the binoculars. And when they arrived at one of the stops or destinations that they were intending to, they were just going to replace them. So that's one of those fuzzy things where I don't know what the truth is, whether it was damaged, misplaced, or just locked to where they couldn't get it, which seems ridiculous either way. You'd think that would be one of the first things you'd look for, but I digress.
That's called a break glass moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly what that is.
10:55 p.m. The nearby Californian, another ship, radios to the Titanic and says, quote, "Say, old man, we are stopped and surrounded by ice," end quote. And here comes Phillips again, responds, shut up, I am busy, I am working Cape Race. Cape Race is a wireless station located in Newfoundland, Canada. Then 11 o'clock, most of the Titanic's passengers are back to their rooms for the evening, getting ready for bed. The wireless operator of the Californian turns off his radio at 11:35. The fleet sees an iceberg in the Titanic's path and rings the bell 3 times to indicate something is ahead. It then calls bridge. Murdoch orders the Titanic a hard starboard, which is a turn to the left, and the engine's reversed. He also closes the doors to the supposedly watertight compartments. And we'll explain that more as it comes into play here. The starboard side of the Titanic scrapes along the iceberg at 11:40. Captain Smith arrives on deck and is told that the ship has struck an iceberg. Shortly thereafter, he is informed that the mailroom is filling up with water. Other reports come in of water in at least 5 of the ship's compartments. The designer, Thomas Andrews, surveys the damage. The Titanic was built to remain afloat with only 4 compartments flooded. Andrews predicts with the current flooding, the ship only has about 1 to 2 hours before it will sink. So the whole event starts at 11:40 roughly when they get hit and start taking on water, according to the official story. So at about midnight, they start getting the lifeboats ready for launch. Now, again, their drill of lifeboats and how to do this was canceled the morning prior. So at midnight, they start. 20 boats have space for only 1,178 of the 2,200 people. An order is later given for women and children to board first, with crewmen to row and guide the boats. So at 12:15, Captain Smith orders Phillips and Harold Bride to send out a distress signal. Although, so there was 2 different ones. SOS was fairly new. It's not the first time it was used, but it was fairly new. And the old one was called CQD.
So CQ is a general call, and then you add D, meaning distress. So they were using both of these over the next several hours to communicate distress signals. The Frankfurt is among the first to respond, but the liner is 170 miles away to the south. Other ships also offer assistance, including the Olympic. We'll get into that one later, the sister ship of the Titanic, but they as well are too far away. At 12:20, the Carpathia, another ship, receives a signal from the Titanic. Come at once. We have struck a berg. It's a CQD, old man, is the message they receive. Immediately changes course to aid the ship, which is 58 miles away. It will take them 3 hours before they'll be able to arrive and assist. Fourth Officer Joseph Boxall, tasked with determining the Titanic's position, revises coordinates given as now 41 degrees, 46 north, 50 degrees, 14 west in the distress signals. Passengers waiting to enter lifeboats are entertained by the Titanic's musicians, who initially play in the first class lounge before eventually moving to the ship's desk. Sources will differ on how long they perform until shortly before the ship sinks, according to some. Speculation will also surround the last song being performed, likely either Autumn, which was a popular song at the time, or Nearer My God to Thee, which one of the musicians had said if he was ever going to go down in a ship, that would be the last song he plays. And so that's where you get that part from the movie. So from here on, it's a whole bunch of the boats being dispatched. All the lifeboats are starting to get filled up. So, you know, we can go through the exact order of them, but as they're launching all these lifeboats, a good chunk of them have more room. Like some of these boats can hold 65 to 70 people, and they're only putting like 20 to 30 in on a good chunk of these.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I read that the fullest capacity, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 88% full. So none of them were 100% at capacity. And the lowest lifeboat was at like 31% capacity. So we're talking about hundreds of bodies that could have been on said lifeboats. Now, there are some conflicting reports on they were short lifeboats, and there are some that say they exceeded what they needed in terms of actually having lifeboats, in terms of regulations. So it really just comes down to the capacity of the lifeboats as they sent them out. That's really the strangest thing, not the number of them. To me, it's the capacity.
Yeah, I've seen so like this one says that they could save about half of the people on the boat with 1,100 capacity. I've seen other ones saying that you could have saved upwards of 1,700 people if you would pack every one of them to the max.
I think at most you could have damn near gotten 75% of the people aboard. That's crew members and passengers.
So at this time, while the boats are coming off, it's about 12:45. So what time did it hit? About an hour. 11:40 is when it got hit. So an hour into it, it's taking them an hour to get boats to start getting filled up to abandon ship, basically. And they start firing distress rockets, flares, basically. Now, this is another one that's kind of convenient. For a distress signal to be shot, it's usually a red flare that you want to shoot off into the sky, or they call them rockets in here. That shows that, oh crap, something's wrong. The only ones they had were white, which I don't know. Like, are they partying? Are they just lighting off fireworks? Like, like this is having a good old time. Like, I don't know what the other ships were thinking at the time. But Titanic fires the first 8 distress rockets. A ship has been sighted less than 10 miles away, but the crew is unable to contact it through telegraph or Morse lamp. The rockets also proved unsuccessful. Crewmen aboard the Californian, which was the ship close by, see the rockets but fail to determine their source. thought for some time that the nearby ship seen by the Titanic, the Californian, will later be believed to have been 20 miles away. And there was a mystery ship reported as well that they feel may have been a Norwegian fishing vessel that was illegally killing seals. And so they just kind of dipped out and didn't want to get caught. So they did not get involved. So more lifeboats, 1255, more lifeboats are going out. You know, there's some notable names of survivors that they talk through. They're the one lifeboat commanded by Quartermaster Robert Hitchens, who was at the wheel when the Titanic struck the iceberg. Notably, his refusal to look for survivors because they will only find stiffs draws the ire from other occupants, notably Molly Brown, one of the more famous survivors, who threatens to throw him overboard. So the tensions are very high. People are panicking and threatening to kill each other as they're all trying to stay alive. At about 1 a.m., another boat is getting brought down with only 39 people. So only half full. They keep launching. Some of these can hold up to 40 and they only have 12. Some of them can hold 80 and only have 40. So plenty of room, as we spoke to before. You know, this continues on. More stories of boats being launched with way too many, or way not enough many. And then let's see, what's this one is Lucy Martha, first class passenger. She was the Countess of Roths, who will later man the tiller. Isidore and Ida Strauss are offered seats in one of the boats. However, Isidore, I don't know, refuses to disobey the order of women and children first. And Ida, in turn, his wife, will not leave her husband's side and says, wherever you go, I go. Neither of them will survive. So that's one of the storied accounts from one of the launched boats. It's the premise to, I don't know, probably a certain crappy movie that came out. Again, this keeps going on. More boats being launched. And then by 125, let's see, actually, there's at 120, one of the occupants is an American businessman, Benjamin Guggenheim's alleged mistress. Guggenheim and his valet later changed into formal attire and reportedly says, we've dressed up in our best and are prepared to go down like gentlemen. His body will never be recovered. And then at 125, possibly not understanding the direness of the situation, the Olympic radios over. So the sister ship radios over to the Titanic. Are you steering southerly to meet us? The Titanic responds, we are putting the women off in the boats while still hours away. The Olympic will be informed by the Carpathia that of the Titanic sinking. And more boats are still continuing to be lowered at this time. So we're at 1:30 in the morning. So this is 2 hours damn near into this boat getting struck and sinking. Amid the growing panic, several male passengers try to board number 14 of the life boats, causing Fifth Officer Harold Lowe to fire his gun 3 times. He later placed in command of the boat. After the sinking of the Titanic, Lowe will transfer people into lifeboats 4, 10, 12, and another one they call Collapsible D, so he can return to look for survivors in the water. He will pull several men to safety and rescue those partially flooded a collapsible lifeboat, which was labeled A, which holds up to 47 people. Phillips continues to send out distress calls with growing desperation. Women and children in boats cannot last much longer, and they continue to launching the remaining boats. 1:40 a.m. after they continued to send off the boats, Collapsible C is lowered. Among its occupants is White Star Chairman J. Bruce Ismay. Although he will later claim that no women or children were in the area when he boarded the lifeboat, others refute that assertion. His decision not to go down with the ship will result in many branding him a coward. Let's see. At 1:45 a.m.
What a dick. I can't believe he would choose himself. Wow, unbelievable.
Yeah.
That one always makes, like, all these people. We're already talking about a ship that was designed for luxury. Now, I know people always talk, oh, it was designed to be unsinkable. No, it was designed for luxury. And you've got the richest of the rich in the most glorious cabins and extravagant amenities aboard this luxury cruise line. And you've got people who could barely afford to eat also as passengers. And you're shocked that the highest paying businessmen that own stock in the ship and White Star Lines, the company, and people of importance are making their way off of it after it starts sinking. You're surprised by this? Like, we're talking about over 100 years ago, the pecking order of society. We didn't look at people the same. Like, let's just remember the time frame and the era here. Like, people were looked at much, much differently depending on their wealth and depending on their importance. And that still hasn't changed. But in an event like this, nobody should be shocked that this stuff happened, that people were picked over to make it off the ship.
Yeah. And in contrast to that person, so at 1:45, there's another emergency boat about to be released aboard some 20 people with oh no, this is a different one. So number 4 is ready to be launched, and Madeline Astor, she was 5 months pregnant, is helped onto the boat by her husband, John Jacob Astor. When Astor asks if he would be allowed to join her, the second officer, Lightoller, who has strictly followed the order of women and children first, he refuses to let her husband join her. He says nothing, doesn't press the issue, and steps away and remains on the Titanic. Later, his body is recovered after he perishes. So he followed the rules. He didn't push the issue, made sure his pregnant wife made it off. So there were some respectable people on here. Yeah. So by 2 a.m, this son of a bitch hasn't sank yet. We're about 2.5 hours into chaos.
I think that's really the true testament to the design of it. It's not the fact that we hear the word unsinkable. That's been a glorified term when we
did you know that
Titanic.
Term did not come out until after it sank?
Yeah, exactly. The terminology unsinkable was hardly used to describe it. As I mentioned before, it was designed for luxury. It was not the selling point that this is unsinkable, because people weren't worried about that. That wasn't really the selling point. It was the luxury. So it was mentioned that, yeah, this design is intended to be an unsinkable design. And that was really the only mention of that word, but it went down in infamy after it sank. So that was one of those glorification type things that came much, much later after the tragedy itself.
Yeah. So at about 2 a.m. is when it gets crazy. So 2.5 hours in, there's only the only lifeboats that remain are 3 of the collapsible boats, which don't have as much capacity. The bow is sunk low enough that the stern's propellers are now clearly visible above the water, kind of the image in our background. Crewmen lower lifeboat D from the roof of the officers' quarters. More than 20 people are on the boat. As the Titanic's bow goes under, collapsible A is washed from the deck, and some 20 people manage to get into the boat, which is partly filled with water. By the time Lowe in number 14 comes to their aid, only 12 people survived. 3 bodies are left in the boat, which will be discovered a month later by the Oceanic. As crewmen try to release collapsible B, it falls, and before it can be righted, it is swept off the Titanic. Some 30 men find safety on the still overturned lifeboat, including wireless operator Bride and second officer Lightoller. The men will later be taken aboard different lifeboats. Captain Smith releases the crew, saying that it's every man for himself. Smith reportedly last seen on the bridge. His body will never be recovered. At 2:17, Phillips sends a final distress signal. He reportedly makes it to the overturned collapsible lifeboat B, but succumbs to exposure, and his body will not be found. The lights of the Titanic go out, plunging
the ship into darkness as the Titanic's bow continues to sink and the stern rises higher out of the water. Placing great strain on the midsection, the ship breaks into between the third and fourth funnels. Reports would later speculate that it took some 6 minutes for the bow section, likely traveling approximately 30 miles per hour to reach the ocean bottom. The stern momentarily settles back into the water before rising again and eventually becoming vertical. It briefly remains in that position before beginning its final plunge. 2:20 a.m., the stern disappears into the ocean. The Titanic is now gone. Water pressure allegedly causes the stern, which still has air inside, to implode as it sinks. The stern lands some 2,000 feet from the bow. Hundreds of people are in the freezing water, although there is room in most of the lifeboats. Crewmen are fearful that the boats will be swamped. Several boats eventually return, but too late. A few people are pulled to safety, but most die of exposure. Over the next several hours, numerous ships try in vain to contact the Titanic. At one point, the Burma's operating wireless operator, believing that he has heard the liner, sends a message: steaming full speed ahead, shall arrive to you at 6 a.m. Hope you were safe. So that 2:20 a.m. So an hour and 10 minutes later, the Carpathia arrives. So we've already had like 3 hours of chaos, basically, and now everybody's in the water or on a lifeboat or in the ocean. So 3:30 a.m., an hour after the final sinking of it, Carpathia arrives, firing rockets around. It takes them 40 minutes to find the first lifeboat. It'll take several hours for the ship to pick up all the survivors they can. White Star Line's offices, this Ismay guy writes a message: deeply regret, advise you Titanic sank this morning, 15th after collision with iceberg, resulting serious loss of life. Further particulars later. The Californian, 8:30 a.m., which at approximately 5:30 learned of what had happened. It searches the area for several hours, but fails to find any survivors. The Carpathia, carrying 705 Titanic survivors, heads to New York City. So 705 people were rescued and brought back out of the 2,200, mainly due to the poor execution of lifeboats or lack thereof. And
that's the wild statistic, which screams that we had the capability to save over 2/3 of the people
and nearby
on board.
ships that didn't react appropriately.
Yeah. So with the lifeboats alone, you could have saved 2/3. With the nearby ships, upwards of 90%, theoretically speaking. And yet, even with that help and the lifeboats, 1/3 were saved, which is just I think this is one of the biggest fuels to the fire in terms of why this entire all these conspiracies exist, is because it was such a just a fumbled execution on almost every level, on something such a large scale with such luxury and money behind it, with so many powerful people. It was just the absolute fumbling of the execution from beginning to end. I think that's why this has so much traction.
Yeah, it's I don't know. There's a lot of things that you look at this and it's just like, okay, we didn't practice the lifeboat drill. Probably in hindsight should have done that. Didn't have binoculars available. Probably have a redundancy to make sure you can do your job. Like there's just all these like little things. You're like, really? Like you can only say really so many times. Now, like at what point do you stop thinking of incompetence and start thinking of malicious intent? And so that's kind of what you're alluding to, is at a certain point, like the human brain kind of goes, you can only do the really test so many times before you're like, really?
Yeah. Well, real quick, a couple of things I wanted to look at quick on the Wikipedia entry. When Titanic entered the iceberg alley, most of the passengers had gone to bed. The command of the bridge passed from the second officer to the first officer. Lookouts were in the crow's nest, 29 meters, 95 foot above deck. Air temperature had fallen to near freezing. Ocean was completely calm. Colonel Gracie, one of the survivors of it, he writes, the sea was like glass, so smooth, stars were clearly reflected. It's not known that such an exceptionally calm water is a sign of nearby pack ice. Although the air was clear, there was no moon. And with the sea so calm, there was nothing to give away the positions of the icebergs. Had the sea been rougher, waves breaking against the icebergs would have made them more visible. And because of a mix-up at the Southampton, the lookouts had no binoculars. However, binoculars reportedly would not have been effective in the darkness, but you can speculate on that as you wish, which was a total except for starlight and the ship's own lights. So the lookouts were nonetheless well aware of the ice hazard, but yeah, they didn't have visibility to what they were looking at regardless. At 11:30, they noticed a slight haze on the horizon, but didn't make anything of it. Some experts now believe that this was actually a mirage caused by the cold waters, meaning warm air, similar to a water mirage in the desert. So when Titanic entered Iceberg Alley, this would have resulted in a horizon, but blinding the lookouts from spotting anything that far away anyway. And then in terms of the collision, at 11:39, Fleet spotted an iceberg in the path. He rings the lookout bell 3 times, telephones a bridge. Is there anyone there? Yes. What do you see? Iceberg right ahead. And after thanking him, Moody relays the message to Murdoch, who orders a quartermaster Hitchens to change the ship's course. Murdoch's generally believed to have given the order hard a starboard, which would result in the ship's tiller being moved all the way to starboard in an attempt to turn the ship to port. This reversal of directions, when compared to modern practice, was common in British ships of the era. He also rang full astern on the ship's telegraphs. According to Fourth Officer Boxall, Murdoch told Captain Smith he was attempting a hard A port around the iceberg, suggesting that he was attempting a port around maneuver to first swing the bow around the obstacle and then swing the stern so that both ends of the ships would avoid a collision. There was a delay before the order went into effect. Steam-powered steering mechanism took up to 30 seconds to turn the ship's tiller, and the complex task of setting into the engines in a reverse would have also taken some time to accomplish. Because the center turbine could not be reversed, both it and the center propeller, positioned directly in front of the ship's rudder, were stopped. This reduced the effectiveness, therefore impairing the turning ability of the ship. Had Murdoch turned the ship while maintaining the forward speed, Titanic might have missed the iceberg with feet to spare. There's evidence that Murdoch simply signaled the engine room to stop, not reverse. Lead Frederick Barrett testified that the stoplight came on, but that even that order was not executed before the collision. So I think really, regardless of conspiracies, you can almost guarantee that it was a really, really bad managed just chain of command and just communication, because a ship this size, you've got a large crew, obviously, as that was alluding to. And not all of them
share
were
this
just
picture real quick,
poor.
just to give you a good idea of the ship size. Like, this is, everybody always says, "Oh, it's the largest ship ever made" at that point, but like, this really puts it into perspective. So the Titanic is the dark blue. Queen Mary is second, which is I think that's the newest biggest ship, but like what you can fit in, like, Jesus, like what a person looks like in comparison. An Airbus A380, like you could fit 3 of them sons of bitches probably inside there, maybe 4.
Damn near,
like
more, maybe more, yeah.
But like that, I mean, this is just a massive. This thing was 10 stories high. Like, it's crazy.
Wow. Anyway. Yeah. It's massive. So yeah, just to maneuver this thing in general through calm water is no easy feat. And if you've got a change of guard in terms of the people maneuvering this thing, and among the ranks are people who aren't using the same and proper terminology, yeah, it's kind of a recipe for disaster regardless. So it's not impossible to see why the iceberg wasn't averted. Now, it's a perfect recipe in terms of the weather and the timing and the chain of command and the communication. So we know ship sank. We know that there was a lot of things that led to this happening, and that's not disputable. So why are there still conspiracy theories? That's what we're here for.
So, which should we? I don't know which one to get into first. Like, there's so many of them.
Well, here, I'm gonna pop this up on the screen. This has got a good rundown of just the just the best of the best. This is coming from the History Channel. I promise this isn't like 1 a.m. History Channel where aliens did it, obviously.
Ancient alien astronaut theorists suggest.
I'm sure that theory exists. Actually, I hope that theory exists because that I want to talk about. God, that'd be great. So this is coming from the History Channel. The big one right out of the gate. JP Morgan owns the White Star Line, the company that owns the ships. JP Morgan plans the disaster to kill his rivals. I think that's a good one to start with. As you can see on screen here.
So there's a bunch to this JP Morgan thing. So let's start with the Star Line company itself. So they are in the business of making big ships, and then some of them happen to sink on their maiden voyages, and then then they collect a bunch of insurance money. And JP Morgan was kind of into shipping prior to this company, like him funding anything or buying this or whatever, however it worked out. But what JP Morgan used to do is he would buy a ship, fill it up with all the stuff that he wants to sell, ship it up the East Coast. By the time it gets to New York, he sells all the shit off the boat, and then he sells the boat because he doesn't want to pay for the insurance. He doesn't want the cost of owning this thing and the maintenance. And like, he just like, he'll buy a boat, move the shit he wants, sell everything, and then do it again. And and that was his experience with shipping methods. Now, this being a company who, gets some pretty sizable payouts through insurance, and this company was kind of going under, he's they did get some insurance. Now, the dispute on like the insurance piece was they only got like $1 million, and the ship cost $7.5 million to make.
Yeah, that's going to be the big bone of contention on probably
he bought the company. He bought the company for 1,000 euros.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't buy the boat. He bought the company for 1,000 euros because they were so fucking financially screwed. And in between the building of the Titanic and the Olympic, and the problems they had, because they crashed the Olympic before they even had it insured. Like, they literally ran into a fucking boat with the Olympic. So to fix that, you know what they did? They pulled parts off of the Titanic to fix the fucking Olympic. And so they're swapping parts around, and all kinds of fuckery is at foot at this point. Like, this is where you're like, oh, it's just the incompetence of these people at that point. Oh, I fucked up the ship, so let's pull parts off of this one. So I don't know, but could it be a big insurance fucking scam that JP Morgan saw a way to make some money off of it? Sure. The really moment that comes through this is that he decides not to join the crew and get on this boat right before departure. Now, there's arguments over like when he decides not to get on. Some people say hours before. I've seen things where it was a day before, and then others saying, well, he had these 5 things scheduled. Well, yeah, rich people have all kinds of stuff scheduled. So I don't know, but it sounds like he pulled out at the last minute. Inconveniently, what was one of the richest man in the world, that Jacob Astor, who we mentioned, stepped aside to let his pregnant wife go ahead and get on. He didn't fight. Isidor Strass and Guggenheim, some of the richest men in the world at the time, all died and perished. Now, as far as the insurance scam, I don't know if those 3 people really matter. I think those go more into policy and power issues with JP Morgan, not so much the insurance.
Well, the insurance theory alone was the repairs to, what you were alluding to, the Olympic had already had a run-in with another ship. The repairs to the Olympic was going to cost somewhere around $800,000, and they had really bad insurance on the Olympic. So the theory of the money being tried to be made, they sink this thing intentionally, try to reclaim some of the insurance money. The ship cost is like $7.5 million to build, and the Titanic was insured for $5 million. So you're still looking at a $2.5 million loss versus $800,000 worth of repair. So those numbers don't exactly add up in terms of the insurance fraud. But what you were alluding to, his entire practice, his business practice of shipping, really wasn't built around numbers matching up, because he wasn't necessarily trying to make a profit and turn a big profit on luxury cruise shipping. He had ulterior motives as well. So it's not crazy to think that if you've got to move money around, that claiming insurance money is a great way of doing it. If you've got to have it on the up and up in one way on the books, taking a loss in terms of money is eventually going to be a profit in money if you've got to connect several different dots. So I don't write that out. I don't write that out entirely. Sure, maybe it's a wash, maybe it's a loss, but long-term, big picture, is it really a loss? Now,
when you think that again, JP Morgan and how much he's involved with modern monetary theory, the Phil KOEs of the world are going to hear that and go, oh yeah, like there's no way that there is, or there's definitely a non-zero chance that JP Morgan found a way to make money off the Titanic being sunk. Non-zero chance.
So the JP Morgan planned the disaster to kill his rivals theory. According to this, millionaire banker JP Morgan planned the Titanic disaster, kill off rival millionaires Jacob Astor, Isidor Straus, and Benjamin Guggenheim, who all perished on board. The theory hinges on the fact that Morgan had originally planned to sail on the Titanic, but changed his mind shortly before it took off, allegedly because he was feeling ill, allegedly because who the fuck knows. Yet it doesn't offer any
reasons given.
Yeah, nobody knows why, but he wasn't. Yet it doesn't offer any explanation for how he caused the ship to hit the iceberg and kill over 1,500 people, let alone the 3 men he supposedly intended to die. To top it off, the theory claims Morgan wanted to kill them because they opposed the creation of the Federal Reserve, even though Astor and Guggenheim don't appear to have actually taken a position on it, and Strauss actually supported it. So that alone, I don't know if there's any records or conflicting records of their stances on the Federal Reserve, but yeah, you can see why that would be a massive motive. But would you have to do something so large scale to try to cover this?
Why couldn't you just hire an assassin?
Yeah, that's kind of my
like, or like hire the chef to poison them. Like there's all kinds of shit you probably
you don't have to sink the ship. I understand if you're trying to kill 2 birds with one stone. You're like, oh, I need insurance money and I need these 3 guys to die. Well, I could just poison them, or I could just kill everybody and sink the ship. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. Alternative versions of the theory claim that the Rothschilds banking family or the Jesuits were the ones who arranged Astor, Strauss, and Guggenheim's death on the Titanic. Washington Post notes, invoking the Rothschilds as international conspirators is a centuries-old anti-Semitic trope. The Rothschild family founded banking houses across Europe in the early 1800s, and they've been a favorite target of conspiracy theorists ever since.
I love how anybody who tries to dismiss a conspiracy theory doesn't actually try to dismiss or debunk the conspiracy theory. They just call you an anti-Semite.
Yeah, of course. And I love this last paragraph from the History Channel. This theory resurfaced recently in connection with QAnon, a far-right conspiracy theory detailing a supposed secret plot by an alleged deep state against U.S. President Donald Trump and his supporters.
Everything's got to come back to Orange Man bad today. Oh, my God.
Of course it does. So, let's...
The fucking shaman sunk the goddamn Titanic. It was a QAnon shaman. He went back in time. He's a fucking time traveler. Didn't you know Trump's a time traveler? Like,
Now you're talking like the History Channel after midnight. Perfect.
According to ancient alien theorists, Donald Trump is a time traveler who went back and sunk the Titanic. Yeah.
I think we've got something there. You've just got to figure out a way to work in Nazi Germany and aliens and dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs aren't real, dude.
Okay, now you've gone too far.
So yeah, when it comes to like killing the rivals theory, like that's, and especially when it comes to setting up the federal banking system, all these people were rich. They're all going to be for it. There's very, very little evidence that or reason for me to believe that rich people in the early 1900s would not have wanted a central bank to create a federal reserve, because all these people, back then, what was it? You had the greenbacks, and everybody had their own different currency, and the economy was going through like a boom bust every 5-6 years.
Yeah, it was a frenzy. It was a free for all.
Yeah,
in terms of people trying to gain power. Yeah,
rich people wanted a central bank. They like, there's no reason for me to think any of these guys were opposed to it. They were all on board with it. I think JP Morgan was a nefarious type person. I'm not sure he really wanted these people necessarily dead. Maybe they were collateral.
I'd love to hear
in a different scheme.
I'd love to hear.
These guys die doesn't mean that their companies or the money goes away. Like, they all look fairly old. They probably got kids.
Yeah, I'd like to hear some conflicting ideas on why this does hold some merit. Like, if you really think about this one, and not just like, hey, that random guy I heard on an Instagram reel has a pretty good argument about why the Earth's flat. Like, if you actually think about it constructively, this one doesn't make a ton of sense to me, because I think the cost is really overweighing something that could have been done much simpler and just as easy of an outcome. So I don't know. I don't love this idea.
I don't know. Maybe you're looking at it through a fisheye lens. Okay.
Yeah, I see what you did there, blurfs. I just, if none of these guys were on the record of opposing the Federal Reserve, that really takes the legs completely from out under this theory. I don't see how this one holds any water. Now, if they're just millionaire rivals, okay, fine. But again, why? Yeah, like you said, why don't you just poison them? Why don't you just get an assassin? This shit happened all the time. Yes, even 100 years ago. So that's not sinking the Titanic. That's hardly an effective way of doing that. Now, if you've got a bunch of other people on board that you want to see gone, sure, but then it becomes really, really obvious.
And who's to say one of these don't survive? Like if that's your plan, I'm going to sink this ship so I kill all three of these. Well, 700 people survived that. That's a third. 1/3 of the people survived. These guys had a 33% chance of surviving, basically.
33 and a third chance. And that spells disaster for you, Joe, at Sacrifice.
Oh, my God.
Scott
3
Steiner
plus 3
promo.
plus 3 plus 3. Oh, my God. We got 666. Oh, my God.
Don't you worry.
There's too many threes.
Religion.
2, 3, 23. Ah!
Evil religion's going to come up again here soon. Let's scroll down here on this. It's the best.
The number
here's my
patterns,
favorite.
love it.
This is my
This one is not too crazy. This goes back to the insurance thing.
I think this is plausible, and I understand there's a lot of reasons why it's not, but this is my favorite. The Titanic never actually sank. People seem to love a good insurance fraud story, so maybe it's unsurprising that this conspiracy theory is one of Titanic's most popular. This one posits that someone switched the Titanic with another White Star Line ship, the RMS Olympic. But as Paul Burns, vice president and curator of the Titanic Museum attractions in Missouri and Tennessee, points out, I've actually been to that one in Branson, it just doesn't make any sense, he says. So this theory states the fact that the Olympic was damaged while sailing, as you mentioned, from Southampton, England to New York in September 1911, and had to return to Harlan.
September 9/11.
New York, September 9/11. Oh my God. New conspiracy right here.
And just seeing those words all put together, you're like, what?
As I was reading it, I was like, oh, that's kind of ironic. Yeah, New York, September 1911. Interesting. Yeah. Simpsons didn't do it first.
Damn you, Donald Trump.
Yeah, this is clearly QAnon. So when it was sailing from Southampton to New York, it had to return to Harland Wolff Shipping Yard in Belfast for repairs. The company repairs the Olympic and sailed to New York and back. It returned to Belfast for more repairs in March of 1912, a few weeks before the Titanic set sail. The conspiracy theory claims that some person or people found the Olympic too severely damaged to be profitable, and so at some point switched it with the Titanic to purposefully ditch the damaged ship, reap the insurance money, and it seems kill a bunch of people in the process. There's a lot of holes in this theory, but one of the biggest is that the Titanic's insurance wasn't enough to cover the Olympics' loss. The Switch conspiracy founders quite literally on its financial merits alone. I don't know about that, because for me, I want to get some I'm going to take this down for a moment. If we can find some actual pictures of the comparison of the two ships, because that's really where this comes down.
Even then, how many people would know the intricate details of the difference of the windows and the few cubic feet differences? Like, not a lot of people are gonna know the difference, because like the ballrooms were the same. So much of it was very similar. So Olympic.
We talked about here. I've got one. Yeah. Nope. Where's my window? There it is. So a lot of people heard us say, maybe a lot of people aren't even aware. Where the hell is it? I shared the wrong screen.
Yeah.
Just kicking ass over here. That's there it is. Okay, so maybe some people weren't like even aware that the Titanic had two sister ships. So here we've got pictured the RMS.
And what was the other one? The Britannic?
Yeah, the Britannic, and that was actually built after the Titanic sank, I believe. So it's got two sister ships. The Olympic was built first, the Titanic was second, and the Britannic came later. And you can see on the screen here, they do look very, 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 very similar. There's really not a lot of difference in terms of the actual blueprints, because they were almost spot on.
So like, what do you do? Come in the middle of the night and like paint over the Titanic and then stick a Olympic sticker on it?
Well, that's where it comes, because you've got the name Titanic all over the ship, on the lifeboats, on the hull, on everything, right? So if it's just cosmetics and you're in a giant hangar where both ships are, literally both ships were in the same hangar at the same time. So with the right amount of people, you could do this. But how do you get all those people to do it and shut the hell up about it? That's the one thing.
You sink the ship with them on it.
Well, that is a good theory. See, there you go. There's a lot of reasons why
there's that rumor that
survive.
they locked all the third class people got locked in, so they weren't allowed to escape. There's that that possibility.
So
nobody
how did the third
confirm or deny that?
How did those third world level peasants get on board anyway? Were they offered a free ride because they worked on the ship? It would make sense,
right?
So you've got some conflicting ideas here on why this isn't possible. So the comparison, I believe, is that the whole numbers don't match up. Okay, because the Titanic had 400, I believe, and the Olympic would have had 400, and Titanic would have had 401. Would have been the last three digits on the whole numbers, and that's going to be
the Titanic was assigned the yard number 401 is what the Titanic had,
because it was built after.
Yeah.
So the big difference is Titanic had some minor design improvements over the Olympic, such as an enclosed promenade deck on A deck and more lifeboats. Olympic had some modifications after Titanic's sinking, such as a double hull and additional lifeboats, but that came after. So if we're talking, let's see, the gross registered tonnage, GRT, was 46,382 tons, and measure not of weight but volume. The displacement was 52,310 tons, even more than the Olympic at 52,067 tons. So pretty minor in terms of numbers there, really, because who's really looking for that? Who's checking for that? Who's keeping records of that? But if we're talking solely on like the innards of the ship, like you'd have to replace a lot of the innards of the ship itself because of the whole numbers, 400 versus 401. It really wouldn't be feasible that this could happen. But why would you have to go to that length? You wouldn't. Would it not just be, again, I'm reaching here a bit, but wouldn't it make more sense to just fudge the paperwork a bit if you have the means of doing that?
Yeah, especially back then.
Exactly.
Like,
so
there's not going to be like a digital
entirely.
trail of,
Yeah, there's no. Yeah, exactly. There's no digital.
Because
trail.
back
There's
then you could just like get an eraser, and change it. It's like,
yeah, I understand the Olympic was built first, so it's going to have the older number, but I don't know. I feel like that there'd probably be a way of doing that that wouldn't solely hinge on just changing a couple of lifeboats. I think you could do this without having to change a bunch of innards out. So I don't know. I'm still on the fence about this one in some regard because it would take a lot of manpower and it would take a lot of effort and a lot of people keeping their mouths shut. But
I think it's more plausible, like the part swaps issue. Like,
yeah,
because and I don't know if this is on the history one or not, but there was like with the part swap going on of them trying to fix the one by taking parts from the Titanic, that made them start to have to use like, for, I don't know, for lack of a better, substandard Chinese made parts or something. I don't know, but like what was it? The rivets that they used, they things like that. Maybe they had, tried to cheapen things up to get this done, which goes back to the incompetency, thought process here. Maybe they were using the wrong materials or not strong enough materials, or that, maybe they just didn't use the materials. Like, maybe it's like,
right.
Did it really sink, or was it the Olympic?
So I've got this pulled up. It's from Social. What is this? Social Shorthand? I've never heard of this website. Did the Titanic really sink, or was it the Olympic? This post is all about whether the two ships were switched, and will leave you with the chance to discuss what you think. So there they are, side by side, the Olympic on the left and Titanic on the right. We showed the comparison before. I wanted to see. I was hoping there was a here you go. This is a good picture because this is one of the things people point to. There's one thing that allows people to tell the difference between the two ships, and there's the portholes on sea deck. When the Titanic is pictured while being built, it had 14 evenly spaced portholes, but when it left Southampton on doomed maiden voyage on the 10th of April, it had 16 unevenly spaced portholes. So that kind of leads people to think there was a switch. So it's not only a piece of evidence that can be gathered to help back up the theory. There's also
it doesn't look like the same part of the ship. Scroll back up.
Yeah, no, it doesn't, does it?
No, it's not the same part of the ship. It's a totally different angle.
Well,
no.
I guess if you look at the curvature on the right,
I'm just looking at the upper deck with the bigger windows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm too.
That doesn't match at all.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why they're pointing at the little windows when up above.
Yeah,
it's the big windows that stand out. That's what throws you off.
Well, yeah, this is a clear.
The whole
distinction
front of the ship looks different.
Ships.
Yeah, the whole front of it looks different.
It's a huge distinction between the two of why they're not the same ship. This was not an exact blueprint, so you can see the Olympic has.
They're pointing at the wrong windows.
Yeah, so you've got all these large windows on the Olympic here, and then they stop. And they turn into little windows like you can see underneath.
Do you see the difference between my two hands? I want you to zoom in on the lines of the knuckles. Like, this is like, get really close to see the lines of the knuckles. No, it's my fingers, you asshole. Like,
yeah, I mean, because if you look at the portholes, you can count those all day. Those are on the bottom. Then you've got the second row windows. Those are almost identical, maybe a little wider on the Titanic. The Olympics are a lot thinner. That's what they're pointing at. Yeah, above that, the large open concept windows stop about halfway in this picture and turn into the smaller windows.
That might be where
like the second
and look at the front on the right side of those pictures. Look at the like what looks like might be the front of the ship or back of the ship, whatever, like where it curves around, like totally different. Anyway.
So yeah, there's distinct differences. So if this is the case and there's conflictions on what the actual design was and what actually set sail, this adds credence to that. So what we're talking about was changing a little bit of the paperwork.
Is this like picture of the like wrote a news article and here's a picture that they posted on the news article? Like, did they have like Getty Images back then where they were like, hey, I need a picture of a big boat, and they don't give a fuck if it's actually the Titanic or something else. So that could be a possibility too. I don't know. I mean, remember yellow journalism? Like, it's always been a thing.
So this guy right here is Paddy Fenton. He's someone who had told his fellow seamen that they were, in fact, switched. Man in Australia sent a letter to the Northern Star newspaper on July 31st, 1996, which talks about a conversation he had with his son, that his son had with Paddy. Here's an extract of that letter. When the surviving crew got to port, they were all taken aside and met by two men, one in a high position in the company. The other man was in a very high position in the government. Government man read the crew the Official Secrets Act, explaining that if they told the real reason for the sinking or the rumors of the insurance scam, they would serve a minimum of 20 years in jail and would never get a job when they got out. So J.P. Morgan was amongst many people who canceled his trip at the last second. We talked about that, as he was ill, they say here, when in actual fact he'd been spotted in France 2 days later and appeared to be in perfectly well health. Let's see. Jay, Bruce, Ismay, his wife, Julie, and their children also canceled due to his wife's ill health before, however, they were spotted motoring, holiday, and will. So a lot of conflicting things here. I think the fact that people are legitimately saying this isn't the ship. We saw the ship. It didn't look like that when it was built versus when it set sail. And now we're talking about government cover-up. So there's people, even back then, having mentioned that this happened. This isn't a new theory. This was being said, but we didn't have the internet 100 years ago, like you just alluded to. The theory, the rumor was there. It just couldn't gain traction because it was so much easier to just stomp those things out back then.
So what we're learning is the men in black have been around for a long fucking time.
Oh, absolutely. Holy crap. Sounds like I'm hitting an iceberg above me in the kitchen. Holy shit. So let's go back to the old History Channel here. I pull that one down, put History Channel back up. Let's see if we get back to the aliens. I hope that's coming soon. Fingers crossed. So
alien astronaut theorists suspect.
So the picture we're seeing here before we move down, this is the picture of the Olympic. This was the damage that the Olympic had.
I'm not seeing anything.
Oh, you're not?
No, you got to add it to the screen here. I got you.
Oh, well, that would, yeah, thanks.
There we go.
Thanks. So, yeah, this is the damage we were talking about. This would have cost $800,000 to fix versus, $2.5 million in terms of insurance money lost if you sank it intentionally.
Some dickhead ran into another boat.
Yeah. All right. This, we're going to move down.
The mummy.
This is one of my... This is so stupid. I'm just going to put the cart before the horse. But a mummy's curse doomed to the Titanic.
So which mummy was this? Because yeah, a little bit. Hold on. Which mummy was this? I got another one that. So the Titanic supposedly sank to its grave carrying a cursed mummy in its hull. The theory, anyway, is that been around for a century. It seems the mummified Egyptian princess also left a trail of devastation across England in the 1900s after being excavated and moved. Alas, and they checked the cargo. Supposedly, there was no mummy on board because they got a hold of the cargo manifest in 1985. Curiously, there were large stocks of raw feathers, hatter's fur, and rabbit hair, but no mummies, allegedly, on the boat. Now, cursed mummy, that's a fun story. One other one that I don't see on a lot of these is that this specific company, when they would make new ships, they didn't christen them. in the traditional way by breaking the bottle on them. And so that's the other curse that they feel. That's why this company had so many ships sink on their maiden voyage, is they didn't follow proper sailor protocol in christening ships.
Yeah, they did not break the bottle of champagne as it set off, because the White Star Line just didn't do that. And if you believe in karma, that would be one of the things that people would point to, is why it clearly sank because you didn't break the expensive bottle of champagne on it. This one, the Mummy's Curse, doomed the Titanic. One of the passengers who went down with the Titanic was William Stead, a British editor who subscribed to early 20th century spiritualism and had spent the past several years claiming a cursed mummy was causing mysterious destruction and disaster in London. As with other myths about Egyptian curses and Native American burial grounds, this myth played off of colonialist anxiety about people whose land they had plundered. On board the Titanic, Stead happily repeated his tale of the mummy's curse to the other passengers after the ship sank. A survivor recounted his story to the New York World, and the media picked it up. Next month, the Washington Post ran this headline: "Ghost of the Titanic, Vengeance of Hoodoo Mummy, Followed Man Who Wrote Its Story." Burns says some people link the mummy's curse to Egyptian artifacts that survivor and hero Margaret Brown really did take with her on the Titanic to deliver to a museum in Denver. In other versions of the story, the mummy was actually aboard the Titanic because the British Museum had sold it to an American who was shipping it home. But the truth is, so-called unlucky mummy is still at British Museum, and no mummy was ever loaded onto the ship. It was an iceberg, not a curse, that sank the Titanic, they say. I think that this one was easy to debunk, and that William Stead, he pretty much just made up the entire story and told it to the other passengers. Like, I don't think
he wrote a book.
Yeah. So, yeah. There's like nothing to this one. This is the funniest one to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he wrote a book after spreading this rumor and probably made some money.
Did he survive though?
Let me find out.
I don't know if he survived or not. I can't remember.
I have his Wikipedia on my thing here. Where'd he go? There he is. W.T. Steed. Nope, he didn't survive. Never mind.
Okay. He didn't write a book.
No.
Was he even on board though? Maybe he faked his death and sank the ship.
Oh wow, this guy was an interesting character here. English newspaper editor who, as a pioneer of investigative journalism, became a controversial figure of the Victorian era. Steed published a series of hugely influential campaigns, whilst editor the Pall Mall Gazette included his 1885 series of articles, The Maiden Tribute of Modern Babylon. These were written in support of a bill later dubbed the Steed Act that raised the age of consent from 13 to 16.
Okay.
So he was against like touching kids. I'm kind of liking this guy already.
Okay. All right.
His new journalism paved the way for the modern tabloid in Great Britain. He has been described as the most famous journalist in the British Empire. He is considered to have influenced how the press would be used to influence public opinion and government policy, and advocated government by journalism, which is a form of new journalism pioneered. He think of journalism as more than just a position to report information, but could, through the paper, the journalist or editor could become ruler. Oh, maybe I don't like him.
He had some good ideas.
Yeah, don't touch kids.
Yeah, okay, one good idea.
Yeah. 16
yeah, this guy didn't make it.
Let's
go figure.
Yeah, 16's still a little young though, but it's better than 13.
I guess. Yeah, that's okay.
He met with William Randolph Hearst, another.
There it is.
Fucking piece of shit in history.
There it is. Yeah, I knew there was a connection there somewhere.
Yeah.
This one I don't believe has much merit either. This is the ship's number read "No Pope" backwards. Here you can see the the ship's number 390904 loosely looks like no pope if you look at it in a mirror. This is one myth
Fucking
that
numbers things drive me nuts.
Yeah, one myth posits that Catholic employees of Heartland and Wolff, the Belfast company that built Titanic, were distressed that the ship's number seemed to say no pope when viewed in a mirror. Was this a sign of bad luck? No. The late Titanic historian Walter Lord wrote that he received letters from people in Ireland saying this no pope story beginning in the mid 1950s. Yet Burns points out in his 86 book, The Night Lives On, there's no such number attached to the Titanic. The whole number painted on the ship is 401, same as its yard number, and its Board of Trade number is 131428. Yet even if one of its numbers had read no pope, there weren't any Catholic workers at Harland and Wolff for it to upset. The company had driven its Catholic employees away in the late 1800s, and by the 20th century had a reputation for only employing Protestants. So, no, this one's complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah, that one. I hate it when they like see these numbers and these patterns and oh my god, like it is the silliest fucking thing and people fall for it every day. Drives me nuts.
And I think this is the last one on the History Channel. Jack Dawson is Jay Gatsby. You know, the fictional character in the movie and a fictional character in a book.
But I mean, technically it's the same person.
Yeah, obviously. So, okay, this one is actually about the 97 Titanic movie, and it's a fan theory, but still. There's a theory on the internet that Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Titanic and his character in The Great Gatsby are the same person. The movie is obviously an alternative timeline where he survives the sinking of the ship and went on to build a life for himself in America in an attempt to reunite with Rose. Science fiction fantasy site, he survives, builds himself into a party-going showman in the jazz age in hopes that Rose will one day appear, but ends up finding a love with another woman, Daisy. Because this one is about fictional characters in film, it isn't something we can prove or disprove. We'll just leave it up to you to decide if Jack really is the Great Gatsby.
one conspiracy theory that we can definitely like it's been proven. Jack could have fit on the fucking door, and that bitch let him die.
Don't they talk about like didn't he like try to get on and it was going to sink?
Yeah, but that was the bad part about the movie is when you look at the thickness of that door and the wood that it was made out of, like they have come up with, there was room for him and it had enough buoyancy to handle him.
You would think.
So that bitch let him die. And then, and then the whole time, well, they're looking for this special fucking gem or whatever. She had it the whole goddamn time. Yeah. She took them on a wild. Imagine going into one of those little goddamn boats and going that far underwater, and the bitch tricked you the whole time just so she could go back down there and see it. How selfish? How fucking selfish is this bitch? Wasn't that the whole premise of the movie? Is she just wanted to go see it again? Like, yeah. She tells her whole story and she wants to find this like pendant or necklace or whatever. Sorry if I'm fucking spoiling the goddamn ending for you, but she had it on her the whole time while they're trying to look for this gem in this little submerged fucking robotic thing. Yeah, she took him on a wild goose chase for nothing. What a bitch. Anyway.
Have you ever seen...
And then rich people want to go down and see it and get fucking,
yeah, we'll talk about that next, I'm sure. But have you seen the alternate version, the alternate ending to Titanic? Full disclosure, I've never watched the full thing start to finish because why? There's an alternate ending.
Long.
Yeah, it's long and boring. There's an alternate ending.
What's the alternate ending?
She's standing on the ship and she's about to throw the fucking necklace into the water when the whole crew busts her doing it. And Bill Paxton basically like pleads with her, no, don't do it. And she's like, oh no, it has to go back in the water. And eventually she convinces him to let her throw it in the water. And it's just cringe, horrible acting, terrible, and defeats the entire purpose. Like you said, the ending's already bad. This makes it so much worse. Like, it's horrible.
puts
It's
these
worth a
guys'
watch 'cause
life
it's
at
so
risk to chase
Yeah.
down something that she had the whole time.
It's so
bullshit.
funny because it's so bad. Like everybody regretted recording it.
Yeah. I got a couple other ones we can browse
right.
through real quick.
Let's do it.
So we already talked about that. There possibility a German U-boat torpedoed the Titanic,
Yeah.
although World War I hadn't started yet. Suspicious minds suggest that the German U-boat could have attacked the British ship. Some survivors reported a vessel lurking miles away until the early morning. The sub may have deliberately targeted the luxury liner or possibly accidentally collided with it. According to Huffington Post columnists, there's no proof, however. Critics of the theory also point out that the German U-boat attack on the RMS Lusitania in 1915 caused the ship to sink in 18 minutes. It took 2 hours and 40 minutes. See the time difference. Like if a German U-boat were to hit this one or run into it, it took 2.5 hours to sink. So, when it really attacked a ship, a couple years later, it sunk in 18 minutes because the Lusitania is the same as the Titanic, apparently. And the damage would have been the same. And that's your logic. Fuck, I hate the Huffington Post. Anyway, it's possible. I always thought that one was like a possible one that it was an oops or whether you run into something or you thought it was something else or the Germans were up to some weird shit back then.
Well, I mean, yeah, are we really going to blame the Titanic sinking for the start of a world war?
Yeah.
Maybe. I guess we could.
There's so Captain Edward Smith, this was supposedly going to be his last mission, last time he was going to sail. And so this captain may have been under pressure to create a new speed record. If you want to do the quickest crossing of the Atlantic, there's no evidence that his boss, White Star Line CEO Joseph Ismay, piled on the pressure. But Paul Brown of the White Star Line believes it is unlikely. Still, it's a juicy theory. It didn't help that Ismay jumped on the last lifeboat to leave the Titanic because he was the coward one. 75% of the third passengers were drowning. Titanic Captain Edward Smith body was never recovered. Final moments remain a mystery. Blah blah blah. But the some of the thought was if he's going to retire after this voyage, could he hold the speed record of crossing the Atlantic with the Titanic, so he can kind of go down in history as fuck yeah, check that out, or maybe the company wanted him to do it so they have something to have in the newspaper to raise money and get attention and stuff like that. So it's plausible.
I think the big problem with this theory is just the course layout. I don't think even with shortcuts being taken, the actual route of it making multiple stops and arriving back in New York, I don't think there's any way that this could have realistically beaten any records because it wasn't. I don't know that it was capable of reaching the speeds that it would have been necessary, especially taking the route that it was on, to break said record. So I think this one pretty much, it just gets boiled up to, it's a nice thought, but it wasn't a realistic possibility anyway. So I don't think there's much weight here.
Yeah. The other one that we didn't discuss was the coal fire theory. So this one might be one of the more it could have. So a pile of coal stored that could have been smoldering. So as they were loading it into the Titanic, all the coal for the engines, that some of the coals were hot. And as they piled them up, you had embers slowly burning the piled up coal, which eventually would have exploded, whether that be in unison with the ship gets hit and causes the coal to combust and blow up, and creating that chain reaction, because the four chambers underneath that they sealed up were supposed to be airtight and seal up the water so they wouldn't take on anymore. but the idea is that maybe when it got hit, it caused that coal to blow up and caused that airtight seal to obviously not be airtight and sealed anymore because it blew up. So that's it kind of leads into the next one, which is the perfect storm theory of, yes, it hit an iceberg. Yes, it had hot coals. Yes, there was a lot of incompetent people on there. Yeah, it was just like, holy shit, all these bad things just kind of rolled into one big fucking snowball of disaster.
Yeah, this one's it's not as sexy of a conspiracy theory, so people don't really talk about it much. But yeah, this does sound very, very plausible because, again, this comes down to design and execution error. That's not out of the realm of possibility at all, is it?
Nope. Well, look at Boeing planes right now. You know,
yeah,
shit just falling off in midair. Like
that's a design.
That one where
right?
That one where the dude's phone got sucked out of the plane when the door fell off.
Yeah,
and they found the phone on the ground intact. And yeah.
That sounds like more of a selling point for a phone than it does an airplane.
I know, right? I swear to God, iPhone probably had Boeing go, you let the door fly off. I'll put somebody right there with a brand new iPhone and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Fucking clever. It's not good for Boeing, but
you imagine being the guy that gets hit by that?
Yeah. This is what DEI brings you, folks. Just you know.
Fantastic.
Yep. Shoddy craftsmanship on Boeing planes. I don't want to fly on a Boeing plane that's been made in the last 5 years. Like, I remember I used to get upset about like I'd get on a plane and be like, God, how old is this thing? This is like from the 70s. No, I trust them. I don't trust anything Boeing's made in the last 5-10 years because those are scary. I'd rather have one that looks like it was duct taped and put together. I feel a little bit safer.
Yeah, the out of date stuff actually makes you feel a little more secure. That's sad.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's the same thing with everything. We're living in the age of
back when
really reusable plastic. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. If you ever win the lottery, are you gonna get a submersible and go down and visit the Titanic?
Yeah, I had a great idea. Let's shove a bunch of people with a bunch of money into a tomato soup can and go down to try to look at the Titanic. Doesn't that sound like a good idea?
Yeah.
No, that was a fucking stupid idea.
No,
fucking stupid. This is my for those who don't know, a bunch of wealthy assholes went down on a mini submarine and didn't make it.
It was like the story of the year last year. Everybody was obsessed with this goddamn thing.
Yeah, and everybody was like, "Oh, they're gonna find him." No, they're not gonna find them because this was like an instantaneous.
They heard knocking.
Death.
I'm like,
they died.
They didn't hear knocking. That wasn't knocking.
No, that was their brain losing oxygen. No, they were done very, very quickly. That was it. This is real. I will still never understand this because you're talking about a bunch of people with money and means. Why couldn't they do something more large scale if they really wanted to do this? Why did they all have to cram into a sardine can?
Yeah, and when they got into it, there should have been I don't know, maybe just my instinct. I don't know. I'm a little claustrophobic anyway. I would have looked at it and been like, never mind.
Yeah, no shit.
Just keep my money. I'm not getting in that fucking thing. That looks terrifying. There's the pictures and the videos that they had of prior trips. I'm like, and then the prior videos that they had of them at depth, and you can hear the you can hear the whole thing's under so much pressure and making weird noises. I've been like, oh no, we're gonna die.
Yeah. No, I can't believe anybody of wealth looked at that and went, this is a great idea.
Just proves that rich people are fucking stupid too.
Yeah, this was June of 2023. The Titan submersible, operated by tourism and expedition company OceanGate, imploded during an expedition to view the wreck of the Titanic in the North Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Newfoundland. On board the submersible were Stockton Rush. He's the CEO of OceanGate. Paul Henry Nargiliote, French deep sea explorer and Titanic expert. Hamish Harding, British businessman. Shahzada Dawood, a Pakistani British businessman. And Dawood's son. No, Suleiman. Shahzada. I don't know. Shahzada. Sorry.
R.I.P.
Yeah. Communication between the Titan and its mothership Polar Prince was lost 1 hour, 45 minutes into the dive. Authorities were alerted when it failed to resurface at the scheduled time later that day after the submersible had been missing for 4 days. Remotely operated underwater vehicle discovered debris, big shock, containing parts of the Titan about 500 meters from the bow of the Titanic. Search area was informed. Sonar detection of an acoustic signature consistent with the implosion was found. Like we said, this was instantaneous.
Yeah, it was. That's what I imagine. The noise they heard as the lights went out was just that was it. And it was just silent.
Yeah. I don't know. It was such a weird story. I think that's why people latched onto it, because what were a bunch of wealthy people doing, jumping into this little thing to go do this? Like, there's been
of all the
successful voyages in a submarine to go down and look at this thing. Why were they all doing this in such a small vehicle?
All the things to go down and look at. Why? Like, what? I don't get the fascination with this fucking boat.
I get the expert. The Titanic expert probably wanted to go see it. I get that. Why everybody else? Why was the CEO in there?
There's so many more things to go explore. Like, why? God damn it, people. If I'm rich and I'm like, I want to get into exploring things, I'm going to explore some shit through people that I pay. I'm not getting in that fucking thing. I'll be like, hey, like, I don't want to go see it myself. I want you to go get it and bring it to me because I'm rich. And that's what rich people do, is they pay other people to do the hard part. And then they bring it to you and you go, oh, cool. I got it now. Yeah. That's the point of being rich. So you don't have to do shit.
I thought you didn't have to do shit
maybe I
yourself.
just don't have the spirit of it, but God, I'm like, I don't know. That's the point of having fucking money, you assholes. Let other people die in your stead.
Yeah, I don't fucking get it. One thing we didn't talk about was there's actually a book that was written called Futility. It's a novella, and it was written by Morgan Robertson, first published in 1898. And it was revised as The Wreck of Titan in 1912. It features a fictional British ocean liner named Titan that sinks in the North Atlantic Ocean after striking an iceberg. The Titan and its sinking are famous in similarities to the passenger ship RMS Titanic, sinking 14 years later. After the sinking of the Titanic, the novel was reissued with some changes, particularly to the ship's displacement. The first half of Futility introduces the Titan, described as the longest and fastest ship in the world that is also considered unsinkable. And the hero, John Rowland, a disgraced former U.S. Navy officer who was dismissed from the service, now an alcoholic, he works as a deckhand on Titan. One night while sailing between America and Ireland, the Titan crashes into a smaller ship at full speed in fog, splitting it in half. Rowland, who witnessed the collision while on lookout, is offered a bribe by the captain for his silence, but refuses and vows to expose the deed once in port. Captain and officers attempt to discredit Rowland's testimony by drugging him. The next night, the ship hits an iceberg and capsizes. Only 13 people survive. Rowland saves the young daughter of a former lover by jumping into the iceberg with her. A pair find a lifeboat washed up on the iceberg, and Rowland also fights and kills an attacking polar bear. No, goddamn. They are rescued eventually by passing ship and brought back to England. Back in England, Rowland tells of the events of the voyage, including the destruction of the smaller ship, the attempted cover-up, and drugging by the captain and officers who have also survived, and the ordeal on the iceberg to an insurance underwriter responsible for insuring both ships. Rowland refuses to testify before court and instead goes to New York City with the girl. Once there, the girl is recovered by her mother, and Roland is arrested for her kidnapping. Sympathetic magistrate discharges him and rebukes the mother for being unsympathetic to her daughter's savior. Roland then begins living alone. In a brief final chapter covering several years, Roland progresses from homeless and largely anonymous fisherman to a desk job, and finally, 2 years after passing a civil service exam, to a lucrative position under the government. Later edition includes a follow-up. Roland receives a letter from the mother who congratulates him and pleads for him to visit her, and from the girl. So I think in a nutshell, a lot of the conspiracy theories that we talked about stem from this specific novel that ironically came out, less than 2 decades before Titanic sinks. The similarities are crazy, actually. Like 14 years later, this actually happens to a ship of a very similar name. Now, who's to say the Titan in the book wasn't an inspiration for naming of the Titanic? But I don't think that matters. I think what matters is the whole entire plot here kind of takes the entire events of the Titanic sinking and it exaggerates them so grandiose and really kind of parallels a lot of the stuff we already talked about. So I think that's where a lot of this comes from. But yeah, it's still very, very, very ironic.
Speaking of books and conspiracies, just because I always have to bring everything back to full circle. 19th century publication and reception. Lockwood published the first novel, Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump and His Wonderful Dog Bulger, in 1889. And its sequel, Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, in 1893. The novels recount the adventures of the German boy Wilhelm Heinrich Sebastian von Trump, who goes by Baron Trump as he discovers weird underground civilizations, offends the natives, flees from his entanglements with local women, and repeats this pattern until arriving back home at Castle Trump. Yes, this is a real book.
Essentially,
of it. Did you like? This is the greatest part of it. Is he discovers weird underground civilizations, offends the natives, flees from entanglements with local women, and repeats this pattern until he gets back to Castle Trump, like Trump Tower. Like, it's fucking. You couldn't have fucking wrote that any better. Like,
oh my god. I like how you were able to connect it all the way back to the History Channel, bringing up QAnon.
Yep. It's beautiful.
It's fantastic.
It's beautiful. It's not about Donald Trump. It's about Baron Trump. We are just getting into this shit. We're gonna see what Baron does here in about 20 years.
Oh God,
he's a time traveler.
Well, at least I'm just glad that there's a collection of stories to help guide us through that foretell the future. That's outstanding. That's so lucky.
It is. It is absolutely lucky. I don't know. Hopefully tonight y'all learned something or you had some fun. Let us know in the comments. Make sure you do all the things to help support the show and help us out. Check us out everywhere. Join us on live streams, all that good stuff. But yeah, no, this was kind of fun. I know we had to go through and get this one out of the way. Ultimately, what do I think happened and what Tony think happened? I do think JP Morgan had something at foot here. I'm not making accusations, but I do not feel he is innocent in any way, shape, or form. I do feel there's, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like JP Morgan knew something was going to happen or knew that he should not be there, and probably somehow, some way, nefariously made some money off of this, and whether three people that may have been competitors or not, or friends or foes or not, I don't think it was a big thing for the central government or for central banking necessarily, because that was going to happen with or without this. I think it was more of securing power and money in the long run. And yeah, I think he had a good feeling that something bad was about to happen. And if it did, he wasn't going to be there for it. So that's my conclusion. Whether it was going to sink or not, JP Morgan, yeah, he he did some bad things before and after this. So fuck JP Morgan.
Fair. Yeah, I don't think he's innocent. I mean, you got to look at a guy who's got that much wealth, that much influence, that much power, and look at an
He's
incident
a puppet
like
for the
this and
Rothschilds.
Yeah, of course. So I
Sorry, I had
think
to get my
there's any way.
anti-Semite remark in there.
Well, of course, I would expect no less. Yeah, I don't think there's any reality where there wasn't something fishy going on in terms of a power struggle or a grab for more power and wealth. So no, I don't think he's innocent in any regard, whether that was just shoddy planning, construction, whatever. I don't think there was an assassination attempt here. I think this was
Convenient.
largely, yeah, I think it could have gone a lot easier if that was the goal. In terms of the switch, I think that's probably the most plausible conspiracy of this entire saga, hands down. I think there's a way to do it. I think records are, like we mentioned, a lot easier to fudge 100 years ago. So I think that's the one that holds the most weight. Now, why that happened, we can debate, we can talk, we can dissect it all you want, but I think that's the one with the most legs. So before we sign off, Stryker, did the Titanic actually sink? No? What was it? The Olympic?
Yeah.
Okay. Stryker's still convinced it was the Olympic.
He's with the swap theory. I got you. Respect.
Where can people find you on YouTube, Stryker? Huh? You got to talk. This is where you say something.
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know your own channel? That's Stryker G on YouTube if you want to check out his shenanigans and fun. So there you go. There's his cameo, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Share with the kids. Like, share, subscribe. Stryker G on YouTube. I'm getting joked.
Well, Tony gets joked. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Like I said, look forward to seeing you on a live show, hopefully sooner rather than later. But until then, folks, as always, appreciate you. Love you. Tony, take us away.
Thanks for joining us. And if there's topics and conspiracies or lists, anything topic-wise you want to hear that would entice you to listen to a pre-record instead of a live stream, I mean, we want to hear about it. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about and blather on, and we'll try to get it in the rotation. But we'll catch you on the next one. We'll see you on the next live stream.
And see if it just smooths itself out.
Back, tell you what I'll do if I ever get back. I promise to refabricate you, raging rivers of gold. That's what the brochure advertised. And now we're lost, we gotta take it down. Let you down slow, it's hard to survive.